Welcome to Shop Talk Live, episode number 311. I'm Ben Strano.
And I'm Amanda Russell.
And we've got a fun show for you today. Amanda ran the show on this one. So tell us what's in store for the listeners.
Some exciting news about an upcoming event we have. And then we talked dovetails, how to veneer tambour doors, and how to design around a limited amount of material.
With
Mike Pekvich and Bob Van Dyke.
All right.
Yeah.
So, two heavy hitters.
Yeah. It was quite the episode to host for the first time.
You got thrown in the deep end. That's all right.
Well, I chose the questions, so I kind of was a part of that too. Yeah. But I think it went well. So
Good. I've already listened to that end of it while I was mixing it, and I was very, very happy and thrilled and proud of your co-hosting prowess.
Thanks.
Before we get started, sorry audience, of course I have to. Before we get started, Amanda, we got to tell the audience, we got to remind them about Mike's e-learning course that's coming up.
Yes, his design course
starts in April. And everybody can find out more information by heading on over to finewoodworking.com/elearning. And Amanda, I need to send you the course materials before everyone else, so you get a preview.
Awesome.
It's a pretty cool class. It's a really, really, it's one of those classes that the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it, where it's very interactive, where Mike is he's actually going over your designs throughout the process, throughout like the 4-week process, I think. So, building or from sketching out different ideations and then honing in and really leaning on one idea and variations on the idea, building models and then doing full-scale drawings. It's a process, and going through it with Mike is a great way of doing it. It was so fun to watch the students last year go through, and there were some really cool designs that came out of the class. So
I believe
I'm excited.
that. Yeah. Getting feedback on design is something that I've experienced very little of, and that's such a unique opportunity. So yeah, I'm looking forward to watching that play out.
That's one of the things that I always miss about college was like the feedback sessions of like, you do a thing and then everyone sits around and in a safe environment,
Right.
where nobody's there to embarrass one another or whatever. I think feedback's awesome and lacking from day-to-day life. Constructive, safe feedback, I should say. If you go on Instagram, you're going to get plenty of feedback, but...
Right. Yeah, this is a lot different. Good things.
Okay, so let's get started with you asking Mike and Bob questions. And then at some point, we're going to come back and we're going to do a little discussion ourselves. And yeah, folks, we're changing it up here. We're going to try some new stuff. So hang on.
This is my first week hosting the podcast by myself. Really excited to be able to talk to both of you. And we wanted to have you two on specifically to talk about an exciting thing coming up next month. So would you like to share what we've got going on?
Sure. I mean, Bob can talk about it probably even better than I can. So at Fine Woodworking, it's been a few years since we've had a live event. COVID put the end to our Fine Woodworking lives, which were pretty big deals. They were big affairs, took a lot to put on, and it was a great weekend for people, but I think it was pretty expensive once you factor in travel expenses and all that kind of stuff for everybody to show up. But we wanted to get back on track with live events, and we thought the best way to do it would be to throw a free event party hosted by Bob at Connecticut Valley. Bob puts on an event every fall. He has an open house and he has a number of demonstrators, a gallery of student work, used tool vendors out back. And it's just a really fun event. And I was thinking that that would be a really good sort of model to base a live event on. So instead of one day, we're taking it up to 2 days. We're going to have dozens of demonstrators. The focus is really on woodworking demonstrations. Got tons of people from Larissa Huff to Steve Latta, Andrew Hunter, Bob. I'll be there goofing around myself. And then we're also going to be having a dedicated room in the back. Bob has a second shop space we're going to use for scheduled live demonstrations. And then out on the floor, there's going to be a bunch of workbenches with people hanging out doing demonstrations there as well. So I'm super excited by it. And again, it's a free event. You can go online and pre-register. Pre-registration is an optional thing. What it does for us is it gives us some idea of how many people are going to show up because we honestly don't know. It's April 26th and 27th, so we're less than 2 months away. Because this was the first time around and it took a while to kind of get our act together, we're letting people know a little bit on the late side. But hopefully for the folks who want to attend, it's going to be plenty of time to work us into your schedule. Bob, what do you want to add to that? Because Bob is basically the one who's organizing all the demonstrations and he's doing the lion's share of the work. I just get to take credit for it.
Right. So what he said. So yeah, basically what Mike just said. I mean, I've been telling people, if you've been to my open house in the fall, think of that, multiply it by 2, and then put some steroids on top of it. And that's what we're talking about. It's going to be just that much more. And it's actually going to be tough because now I'm going to turn around and do my regular open house in September, which I'm assuming is going to be like, oh, this is kind of like, what a waste. Why aren't you doing it like you did last spring? So we'll see. But I think it's going to be good. I mean, like Mike said, the focus of this is demonstrations, is learning. I mean, Mike and I, we did we were out at Handworks last fall. Mike and Steve Latta and Ben and me and Mike Maselli, think of this as sort of like a Handworks, but we're really all about demonstrating and teaching people how to do this stuff. So not only do we have the timed demonstrations in the back shop, it's ongoing demonstrations in the main shop and in the tent outside. So Andrew Hunter is going to be doing a 45-minute thing on comparing Japanese and Western hand planes and how they work. But, he's also going to be working at the bench for 2 days straight. Chuck Bender's one of the top furniture makers in the country. And, he's going to be doing a talk on planning a project and everything from, I got this idea to how do you make it happen. But like I said, I mean, I don't know too many furniture makers who are more, that can, a guy can do anything and without even thinking about it, so for 2 days, it's going to be just that, we're going to be doing, on and on the whole time, so, it's just a lot of fun. The other thing that's going on, the whole side of the building will be set up with tables for antique tool dealers, or I've been trying to term it dealers in antique tools, because antique tool dealers to me just means old guys. And they're not all old guys. So we'll have at least a dozen of those going on, and it could be even more than that. Last fall we had 10 or 11, and I wouldn't be surprised if we had more than that, because fine woodworking's advertising reach is a little bit farther than Connecticut Valley's advertising reach. So I would bet you that we're going to have people calling me up and going, "Hey, can I get in on this?" So yeah, that's cool. The back of the building, we've got a 30 by 45 foot tent, and that will have more demonstrating going on. Shaper Tools is one of the sponsors. They'll have a whole display set up, and then Shaper and Woodpecker, Blue Spruce. They'll all be set up. And then I also have a blacksmith coming. We do blacksmithing classes, so Chip Sawalski is going to be set up, and then right now I'm working on food trucks.
Yes.
So the food trucks right now, we got 2 days worth of a Maine lobster, Cousins food truck, Cousins Maine Lobster, I think is what it's called. So they'll be there, so lobster rolls and all that good stuff. A pizza truck for Friday, and I am hoping the barbecue truck is up in the air, but it's either going to be barbecue or Mexican to go with the lobster for Saturday, and then maybe a dessert truck too. What the hell, just to make it a little bit more fun. So yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you got everything covered. Basically, that's
kind of
a
I mean,
dream weekend, honestly.
I mean, the regular open house is quite an affair, but we've been doing it for 23 years, so I've gotten kind of good at it, and it's not a real big, real lot of effort on my part. And so this is a little bit more. So okay, it takes a little bit more work, but it'll be more fun. The other thing is the presenters. I'm asking in the regular open house I do is always a gallery of student work, and this time I'm going for a gallery of instructor work, presenters. Because most of the people who are demonstrating are regular instructors at the school, so I'm hoping that I can get a whole bunch of stuff from that. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Yeah. And a big shout out and thank you we have a couple sponsors, Shaper Origin and Woodpecker Blue Spruce, who are helping cover our costs for rentals, electricity, security, all that good kind of stuff, because we just wanted to throw a party for really no reason other than let's get together and hang out and talk about woodworking, and we're really glad to make it a free event. And Amanda, you are planning on coming up and hanging out for the show as well.
Yes. So Ben and I will be working together to live stream the event as well for those who can't make it in person. So that's another part of it as well that will be exciting to.
Is that going to be recorded so that it's available later?
I believe the plan is it's a live stream for now. I don't know that it'll be published later. I'd have to ask Ben, but.
I mean, you just have to hit record, right?
Yeah, should be simple enough. Yeah.
So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the demonstration room in the back with the scheduled demonstrations, we're hoping to have a live feed. We're thinking about having that available for unlimited members, just as a little perk for signing up. And I think the intent was, and this is all very fluid, was the live stream as well as some sort of a recorded thing for people to take a look at as well. But another reason why it's a free event, because we don't know how it's going to work, and we don't want anyone getting mad at us if it doesn't. So, hey, we'll give it a go.
Yeah.
Didn't cost you anything. Don't get mad at us.
Yes. Go get a lobster roll. It's all good.
Right. Lobster roll, dessert.
Yeah. What the hell? Right. So Mike, Type On is one of the sponsors also.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good.
Right.
Yeah. So, just to give you a quick, this is right now, it's not completely, it's a tentative list, but just to give you the list of the seminars going on in the back shop is going to be Andrew Hunter with Japanese and Western hand planes, how they work. Will Neptune applying geometry to American period furniture design. Chuck Bender planning a project from design and cut list to execution. Tad Fallon is a incredible craftsman doing very high-end finishing and restoration work, and he's going to be doing gold leaf gilding, which is fascinating stuff. Matt Bickford is going to be molding planes, using hollows and rounds. I'll probably be doing a thing on 5-minute dovetails, what's important about dovetails and what's not. Mike Maselli is going to do an hour on basic furniture finishing. Frank Straza, double bevel marquetry. Steve Latta is contemporary inlay techniques. And then Dave Diard is Greenwood chair building, doing steam bending and shade horses and all that good stuff. And if we can fit it in, Mike Pekovich is going to do a thing on contemporary furniture design techniques. So lots of cool stuff.
A lot. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
It's exciting. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
And it's not going to rain.
Right.
I've already made, that was the first arrangements I made.
You have to plan it right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's great. I'm definitely looking forward to that. Seeing everybody all in one place is always great. So while I have you two here, would you want to dive into some questions we have for the week?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay,
sure.
Great. All right, this one's from David. Everyone wants a good, tight dovetail joint. Older pieces often have drawers with mangled, gappy, ugly dovetails that were plenty strong but stayed hidden so appearances didn't matter. Dovetails joining a case or featured prominently might be highlighted more and hopefully appear more even and tight-fitting. Now that we're required to post every dovetail joint to IG, many have raised the bar in keeping the highest standards for appearance out of each and every dovetail joint, seen or hidden. However, I quite often see beautiful dovetails that have a deep, gouging knife mark across the grain. Of course, the first step in layout would have been to strike a line for board thickness and to seat your pins, then tails later. But once the joint is fitted and glued, why not take a couple passes with a plane to tidy up the layout lines? This has to be done, otherwise oil or finish will accumulate in the knife mark and highlight it in the finished piece. Is it just me who thinks that, or am I trying to show off some dovetails and make them look pretty? I should at least go through the trouble of planing out my layout marks. Or nobody cares about the ugly lines and I should keep quiet. The layout marks don't have to be super deep, gouging marks. That'll make it easier later. An example where I can pick on Mike and his wonderful cover piece in Fine Woodworking 303 from last summer, where the case was dovetailed and these layout lines are clearly visible on the cover image. His case did have an 1/8-inch reveal, so the pen stuck out. I can see it in the situation that I wouldn't know how to clean off the layout lines. Any ideas how you would approach that challenge? This is a long question, but hopefully pretty clear.
Yeah, so basically, what's with the scribe lines on the shoulders of dovetails? It's pretty ugly. What's the big deal? Why didn't you get rid of them? Mm-hmm. It's a good question because he brings up period furniture as well. And Bob, you can talk to this where historically dovetails weren't something you were even supposed to take a look at. I think it's more of a modern thing that people actually are trying to show them off a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm coming at it. I'm coming at it more from period furniture, and in period furniture, the joinery was not exposed. You went to, as much trouble as you could to not show the joinery. Dovetails were something that was a basic joint that everyone did, and everyone knew how to do it, because how the hell else were you going to hold two boards together? There weren't any, there really wasn't anything else. And there were no dominoes or anything like that. And nails cost money, and screws cost even more money. So dovetails cost nothing to make. And the thing, and I've always felt about it is, that I've looked at thousands of pieces of period furniture, and the drawers always have the cutting gauge line on them, and that's because it's an integral part of the joint. So it's I look at it as people didn't start noticing the gauge line until they went for 50 or 60 years of seeing machine cut dovetails that don't need that gauge line. All of a sudden you start seeing hand cut dovetails again, and hey, what's that line there? We got to get rid of that. And it was never an issue before. It was just a part of the joint, just like any of it. And I've looked many times, because this question has come up many times, and I've had more than a couple of discussions with people about it, where I do see in period furniture they never got away from, or got a way of disguising the dovetail joint on the top of a slant front desk. You look down on it, and the sides are a lap. You got lap dovetails, and there the scribe line is sometimes completely there, sometimes partially planed away, sometimes completely planed away. It really depended. I don't think anyone made a big deal of it. It was just kind of there. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot. It does tend to bother people. It seems to maybe bother non-woodworking people who they see it and they see it as a defect. Like Bob said, for me, it's just a part of the building process. It's kind of a mark of the maker. And for me, it's not so much is there a scribe line or not, but is it a nice scribe line? Is it scribed with a sharp knife so there's no tear out? Is it even in depth all the way across? Is it just one scribe line instead of maybe a couple, with some hit and misses? And then if I see, a scribe line partially there and partially not there, does that speak to something that maybe went a little bit wacky in the building process and you needed to kind of plane more here than there? So It doesn't bother me. I do take pride in a nicely scribed line that's nice and even all the way across the joint. Some makers don't like to see it. Andrew Hunter is someone who doesn't like to see the scribe line going all the way across the shoulders, the tails, and his workaround is he will actually draw a pencil line as a rough baseline for the joint, lay out all of the pin sockets or lay out the tails, and then come back with a marking gauge and mark just at the pin socket line. So by the time he's done, he doesn't have that line on there. So, and that's a conscious decision aesthetically for Andrew to not have it on there. And then sometimes, like on drawer sides, the two philosophies in setting your marking gauge line for drawers is you either set your marking gauge slightly thicker than the stock so that when the drawer sides go on, the pins stick out just a hair and you're planing the pins to the face of the side, in which case you're probably going to leave the scribe line there. Where the other thing is to fit your drawer front exactly. And then when you're scribing for the sides, you set it a little bit shallow so that the sides actually protrude beyond the pins on the front and the back, and you're planing down the entire drawer side. So that way you're not changing the dimensions of the drawer and it's going to fit perfectly, in which case you're planing off the scribe lines in that. So I think it's just kind of it is a function of aesthetics. You can certainly work your way around it. And it's also partly a function of the building process. For instance, the two options when how you're setting the marking gauge depth when you're doing drawer sides. So, if you got scribe lines, make sure it's nice and sharp. You're using a knife. There's no tear out and there's just one line. I tend for a lighter line. Bob tends for a really pretty heavy marking gauge line.
Mm-hmm. Because and as I was just going to say, the gauge line is an integral part of the joint, and that is where you're putting the chisel, and the chisel is the gauge line is what actually cuts the fibers of the wood. Okay, that's what touches the surface. The chisel never touches the surface of the wood. It just extends what the cutting gauge started. And I realized that years ago. I was like, oh, well, then that means that must be pretty important. And that's why, you need a good knife. Like the wheel gauges, to me, don't give you a good, definite starting point. It's there, but it's kind of like, yeah. I want something a little bit deeper that's going to definitely hold the chisel and it's not going to move. So yeah. And when I just wanted one comment from David's question, he was talking about, how he's seen, sloppy, mangled dovetails and all this stuff, and like even in the period, it really depended on the shop and depended on the level of craftsmanship in the shop. So there were some shops where, the Seymours, Chapin, Townsend, all these guys, I mean, everything coming out of that shop was perfect. There was nothing, there was no, gappy dovetails or anything like that, and that was, there was good shops and bad shops then, just like there are now. So hasn't changed.
I knew this would be a good question to ask the two of you.
Yeah.
We can keep going. We can make this a multi-part podcast. Yes.
I'm sure this could go on.
I can throw in Steve Lotta's take on it and on and on and on. We've had this discussion many times.
Yeah.
I love that.
Then there's the overcuts.
Mm-hmm.
We'll save that for another podcast.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dive in that some other time.
Come to the open house, because I'm sure that'll come up.
You could talk for 2 days about dovetails. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great.
Woodcraft Supply knows that woodworking is more than just a hobby. It's your passion. And with Woodcraft's new everyday value, now it's a little more affordable. Woodcraft has lowered the prices on hundreds of essentials that woodworkers use every day, like Bessie clamps, Wood River hand planes, Type-Bond wood glue, dust collection fittings, and more. Check them out online at woodcraft.com or go to one of their 70-plus stores nationwide. It's just another way that since 1928, Woodcraft has been helping you make wood work.
This one's from Tyler. I'm making a monitor stand for my computer. The carcass is cherry, while the doors will be tambours made out of quarter-sawn hard maple, veneered with Karelian birch veneers. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've been following this woodworker out in Poland for a while, and he veneers his tambours with burls, and there's absolutely zero disruption in the grain pattern. I'm assuming he's not using a table saw or bandsaw to cut the tambour after they've been veneered, but rather cutting the slats and veneering afterwards. Basically, I'm looking for your speculation on how he or any of you would go about getting zero interruption in your veneered tambour doors?
Yeah, coincidentally enough, I've just been honing up on tambour door making. I spent a week down in Raleigh with my buddy Sean making a project that had tambour doors. First time I had ever done it. It was a blast. And the main thing is like, this isn't going to work. This is not going to work. And then you do it. It's like, oh, this works really cool. I'm going to do this some more. We had done 2 somewhat recent articles on tambour doors for fine woodworking. One was using solid wood slats that were radius, so it looked like the bumps, almost like a roll top desk. And another article was by Mike Weiss in issue 150, and he made a version with the kind of the seamless veneer front. And so what he had done is he took MDF as the core, he veneered the back of the MDF, cut it into strips, wedged all those strips together in a little frame to hold it tight, and then did a continuous veneer across the top of those strips. And then when that was dry, he flipped it over, kind of opened up the slats a little bit and used an X-Acto knife to slice them apart. So that's how he got that continuous veneer. And I'm sure that's what this person does. I think the person he's talking about is actually going to be in our upcoming issue that's going to the printer in 2 days. We have a designer's notebook on someone who does incredible pieces of furniture with tambour doors, and it is that seamless veneer. So, so there may even be more information in that. Bob, have you ever done any tambour doors or anything like that?
No, I haven't, but I was thinking about it, looking at it, and the technique that you just described was one of the techniques that I would definitely try. I was thinking about it, going, yeah, that would make total sense. And I looked up something that Daryl Keel had done. He had answered a similar question. Daryl is one of the best veneer people in the country, in my opinion. He's the founder of Vacuum Pressing Systems up in Maine. And he had suggested going the opposite, coming at it from the other side, and actually, making sure that the edges of the tambours were finished. So that there was, when you put them together, there was no possibility of getting them glued together, and making them a couple inches longer on either end so that you could hold them all together, either with tape or gluing them together just on the ends, making sure, and that's going to keep them all together really well. And he was putting the canvas on the back and the veneer, the face veneer on the front, and then using the extra length on either end to register a straight edge, and then cutting from the show face with a fine, X-Acto knife or scalpel, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
So I would think that I think it would depend on the grain of the veneer, because coming at it from the face you're going to get a cleaner cut, but you're also going to have the width of the blade. The bevel is going to bruise those edges a little bit. Coming at it from the back, each tambour is its own straight edge.
Right. Yeah. A little bit easier to hit your line, I guess.
That makes that easier. Yeah. So, but whatever you do, try it first. I mean, and try it with that veneer, like the Karelian birch veneer, has a tight grain, but because of all of the burls, it's kind of funky. So I would definitely be trying it before you go doing anything, just to make sure that it works well.
Yeah. Amanda,
Yeah.
you worked with Phil for quite a while. I know he does timbre stuff. Have you tried your hand at that in the past?
Yeah, I actually spoke with him this morning about it because I was trying to remember exactly how we went about doing exactly this situation. And he used a cutting gauge. So he was able to come from the front face of the veneer, and slice each tambour free once that's dialed in. And then you just ease the edges. So all of the tambours go into like a wedged frame.
Yeah.
You get veneered, and then you're cutting each one loose with the marking gauge. But he said he actually like switched over to an X-Acto blade or razor blade screwed to the end of a wooden block. And that block would be whatever width the timbre is.
So you're registering off the end timbre, slice that off, and you just keep going
and
down.
Keep moving.
Yeah. So
super smart.
if the timbres are 3/8 of an inch wide, then your cutting gauge is set to 3/8 of an inch wide.
Mm-hmm.
And if you use like the slicing gauge that Steve uses, that is a X-Acto blade, so it's finer. You're gonna get a finer cut than you would off of, let's say, a typical cutting gauge.
Right.
It's a double bevel, but it's a fine double bevel rather than a heavier single bevel cut.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, so that would work. Yeah.
Yeah. So Amanda, let me ask you this. Actually, I'm opening up this designer's notebook. The person doing an article for us, his name is Tom Bensari. It might be the person he was talking about, but his technique on his furniture was similar to Philip, where as the timbre turns the corner, the slats splay out a little bit and you can see that opening. And then I know in other pieces I've seen traditionally, there's like a little face frame style at the sides that is sort of in front of the panel. So you never see the panel open up around the corner. You just see this seamless panel moving in and out. And I was wondering if you had asked Philip about that aesthetic decision about not minding seeing the timbre turn the corner versus hiding that corner to preserve the look of this illusion of a flat panel.
Yeah, I don't know that we ever discussed why he chose to go about that, though. Mm-hmm. I believe the situations we've done were similar species, so I don't know if it was necessarily like he was trying to highlight maybe the difference between the veneer and the whatever we were using for the slats. But yeah. I'm not too sure what his approach is on that.
Yeah.
You would want to have your slats. I would want to have the slats the same species as the veneer or the same color at least. But it's interesting. I was just looking to see my Seymour book is at the shop. It's not. I'm at home right now because the John and Thomas Seymour, they did some amazing tambour desks with that the tambours were inlaid. That was just incredible, and I would love to now I gotta look at that and see. Okay, so let's find some better pictures and see if I can figure that out how they did it. Yeah. So
maybe you'll come back from museum trips with photos of tambours instead of the little oval inlays and leg stringing and stuff.
It'll be instead of all the inlay and pateray pictures, it will be inlay on tambour pictures.
Okay, fair enough. All right.
Let's not get crazy.
Let's see. I have one more question for you guys.
Okay.
This one's from Bart. When you have some scraps, what is your process for coming up with a design, whether it's an experiment or an actual thing? Normally I start with an idea and figure out how much material I need. This is starting with material and designing to it. This is a hard concept for me, but I don't know if it's because I don't have enough practice or it's just a hard concept. So I guess he's saying what the preferred approach is.
To working with scraps?
Working with around material or vice versa.
Amanda, what's your take on working around what you got versus designing and then buying what you need?
I like both, a separate challenge. I tend to, like, what I've found is, like, in between a larger project, I have leftover material,
Right.
and it's kind of a fun challenge to design around that. But I mean, in best case scenario, I'm buying material to a design.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just an entirely different approach. I kind of like the restrictions of it too, having a certain amount of material and letting that kind of structure how I approach things.
Right.
So,
do you ever buy lumber just because it's a really nice board or boards and then like, okay, maybe I'll use this for something someday? That's sort of halfway in between scraps and designing before you build. Do you have any boards hanging around that?
I do. I traveled with some of those to Philly.
They made the trip. That's
I
cool.
made the trip.
All right.
And yeah, it kind of just sits there until I figure out what to do with it. But yeah. How about
that can be one of the hardest things to use as a board you buy for future use, because sometimes it's too big to cut up for a small project, but it's not enough to make a big project out of. And it starts to take on its own weight of importance the longer it sits on that corner of the wall, to the point where maybe this board's intended purpose is to sit on the wall in that space to decorate my shop. So
I'm glad we think the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I find whenever you have that, you always end up getting lumber for a project because that stuff that you got that was just so good, oh, well, what I'm doing now doesn't quite justify it. So, I'm not going to waste that thing on this thing that I'm making.
Yes.
And then you are making something that's really good. And like you said, that board wasn't big enough or whatever. So the upshot of it is, I've got boards that have been waiting around now for, I don't know, 25 years. Hopefully they're going to get used sometime soon.
it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of halfway in between that. I learned a long time ago when I was out doing demonstrations and stuff, if I just, demonstrate dovetails by dovetailing two pieces together, that just ends up in the burn pile. So I would get 4 pieces, to kind of create a rectangular something. So by the time I was done demonstrating for the day, I would typically have this rectangle thing dovetailed together. And I have a number of those still sitting around my shop, and those tend to inspire something at some point. I'll end up making a box or a cabinet out of those. And invariably it'll be, by the time you're done, it's like, this is cool, but it really should have been a little bit bigger or a little bit wider or taller. But those things, to me, I like because they're just a chance to play. There's no risk. It's not lumber that I bought. It's not for a class or for a client. It's just something to play with. And I usually throw a lot of different ideas at it that I've been wanting to try on quote unquote important pieces, but didn't have the nerve to. So it'll have like a lot of different details. And once you do it once and you kind of know what it looks like, how it informs a piece, then you kind of have that in your toolkit for later on. So those types of things I really, really like. It's not quite scraps, but it is. It's almost like, intentional things that are being made with no use that you could kind of fill in the blanks later on. I do like those.
I like that a lot. My shopmate Eric Curtis kind of approaches things that way too, and he just recently did an inlaid, big inlaid box, and he's just walking around the shop picking up all these pieces of wood, and it looks like chaos. Then at the end of it, you're just like, how did you? I think it's funny, like he's able to visualize all of that from a pile of wood that's just been sitting there for a while, and it turned out really good. And same thing with we did an article together last year and about gluing up miters, and he made sure everything was usable by the end of it.
Yes,
somewhat usable. Right. So I like trying to be as precious with material as possible, but also, like you're saying, it's good to be able to play as well. Yeah. That's great.
So, Amanda, you and I are both well on record as wanting woodworking to be as approachable and not financially daunting as possible, right?
I agree. Yeah, completely. We've had this conversation a lot. Yeah.
And there's something that's recently come up, and I have a weird stance on it, and I was surprised to hear that. I think you agree, but there has been more movement on, long story short, the CPC mandating that table saws have some sort of active injury mitigation. So basically, if you touch the saw blade stops or goes away, kind of thing, as found on SawStop saws. And it's a super complicated topic, and I'm not lying when I say I don't think there's a good side or a bad side to this argument. The more I learn about it, the more I see just immense complexity. And unfortunately, though, I think there will be a future coming up where you won't be able to buy a table saw under, I'm willing to bet $500, $600, $700 new. And at one point I went on record on this show as saying, I don't think table saws should be available for under $500 because they are too dangerous of a thing to just be purchased without the weight, the mental weight and anguish of knowing how to responsibly use a table saw. I mean, what's your take on cheap table saws?
I agree with that. I just don't think it's an entry-level woodworking tool, and the way it needs to operate, you want the most amount of safety possible and the highest quality possible. So with that comes kind of that price point, I think. It is complicated because I do want everybody to be able to afford tooling if they operate it safely and properly. But I told you the other day that, my first tool, woodworking power tool, was a contractor saw. Yeah. And I feel very lucky that, not having much knowledge, I got by with that unscathed, So, yeah, I think if it were to become that way where there were some sort of safety feature on all of them, I'm comfortable with it being 500 or above.
I don't know, and we've discussed this a little bit, but I don't know if I've ever heard it put so perfectly that a table saw is not an entry-level tool. It's not, and nor should it be. And I think for me, I initially got a table saw. And my parents got me a cheap table saw for Christmas one year because I asked for one because my father always used a table saw. And I thought that was how you did things. And I didn't know how to use it. And I did very dangerous things on it. And I'm very lucky that I did not injure myself. But But nowadays with track saws and like everything that I needed a table saw for back then could have been much more safely done with a track saw.
Yeah. And there's still, there's still possibility for injuries there, but
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But for the most part, ripping and cross-cutting, and you're not having to think about things binding up and kickback. And if your hands are properly placed while you're using one, the chances are pretty low.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think it's a lot harder to find yourself in a situation with a track saw than a table saw. And we all know how dangerous routers can be, but when we talk about joinery that's done on a table saw, you can almost always find a way of doing it on a router or a router table. So I'm curious to hear the audience's reaction to this. So we're going to post a mess of links in the show notes. As we always do in the show notes, there's always a mess of links. But we're going to post the links to all of the deliberations that I can find, and on these requirements that might be coming out soon, and a few different takes on the matter. But also in the comments or on the Discord, I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on sub $500 table saws. And our friend Dinkle, honestly, we were talking about her as like the safety queen, and she does great things on a contractor saw. And Tamar from 3x3 Customs used to work exclusively on a contractor saw. I don't mean to knock contractor saws, but I think probably the majority of the use of a contractor saw is not done safely.
Yeah, or it's using it beyond basic ripping gets sketchy, I think.
Yeah.
Get sketchy.
So I'm going to try and figure out how to put a poll in the show notes, and I'll link to it on Discord. And I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts on the future of woodworking without sub $500 table saws. So let's hear from you, and not in our DMs.
Right.
All right.
Okay, I'll go first. You guys can think. It'll be a potpourri, so you can come up with anything that you want. But it kind of been a while since I'd been like in my shop making like a really quote unquote significant piece of furniture. And it seems like the longer I go between big projects, the more pressure there is to go out and make something, worthy of my time and all that. But kind of what I found myself doing was just making small things that we needed around the house. Rachel needed like a little footstool for her sewing table. And then I needed a desk gallery to put my computer monitor and computer on. So I still have some storage on my desk. And then I just recently made Rachel a little tote for her sewing stuff. And I kind of looked back and said, thinking I hadn't really been doing anything in the shop, and realize that no, I've been making some cool stuff and that it's really fun. So my, technique of all time for the week or piece of advice is, if you're stuck and want to get out in the shop and make something, think of something small. Go small, use your scraps, and come up with something for the house so there's no pressure, and just go out and make it. And to me, it was nice to get out there and make something real, not a lot of pressure, and it still kind of got me in the zone better than if I were out taking pictures or prepping for classes or something like that.
Definitely.
Okay. So I didn't come up with anything other than, because like I said, I'd never even thought of it. So this is totally off the cuff, but maybe someone has answers. Mike, you saw what I was working on this past weekend, and I have an early 18th century William and Mary high chest that I'm finished last fall, and Tad Fallon did an amazing job doing the finishing on it. And it's been sitting since the beginning of the year, right behind my workbench, completely in my way, waiting for me to put the hardware on it. And the hardware is not your basic drill a hole, put a bolt through it, and put a nut on the back of it, and you're done. It's this William and Mary hardware that uses basically like cotter pins and all this crazy stuff. And I've never done it before. So I went to practice it the other day and make sure that I could get it right before I went screwing up this high chest. And as soon as I did it, the bails on the drawer pulls it was cast brass that I bought from Optimum Brasses in England, which is, in terms of period hardware, it's like the best. But it's cast brass, and there were variations in the width of the bails. So I went and put one in, and it didn't quite fit. So I had to spread the bail a little bit, and spreading the bail just a little bit, maybe an eighth of an inch on either end, and it cracked. The brass cracked. And I was like, okay. And I fretted for a while and then tried another one, and that cracked also. So now, where I did have one extra bail, now I'm down one. And I'm stopping until I can figure out how to do this. And I've talked to a couple people, and so far not gotten any answers. We've talked about heating the bales with a torch, heating them with an oven. Chuck Bender was like, wow, I've been buying hardware from Optimum for years. I've done that hundreds of times, never had a problem at all. And I'm like, of course, I'm the one that gets that problem. So if anyone has an idea, or hopefully I can next time around report back and go, yeah, this is what I ended up doing, and it'll work. So, yeah.
It's tough. The piece you're making, it's just a stunning piece. Is that like the most ambitious thing you've made, or you've done like a Chapin Highboy as well?
It's probably I never actually, I never made, the Chapin high chest. We did the class where we made 16 of them.
Right.
And I worked very closely with Will on making the one that we did for the Windsor Historical Society.
Yeah.
But in terms of size and magnitude, that's probably one of the bigger ones. I mean, I like doing inlaid furniture more than that. That was a departure also. I've never done any William and Mary thing at all. That never even occurred to me until I saw the original at the Wadsworth. And I was like, man, this thing's beautiful. So, but then that whole hardware thing, because it's really cool. It's this engraved hardware, that is just the coolest stuff in the world. But the bails are kicking my ass.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like you said, you had that professionally finished, aged just perfectly. It's really a stunning piece. The only thing that needs to go on is like the hardware. And you're like, I got the hardware. And it's like, the bails don't fit.
Now it's not working. I'm like, oh.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got, what do I got? 2 months, because I want to have it done for the open house in April.
Yeah. And so if anybody shows up in April and the hardware's not on it yet, just go to Bob. Bob, what's up with the hardware? Where's the hardware on this?
I ran out of blue tape, because blue tape makes a great drawer pull.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Been there.
What you got, Amanda?
Man, I'm like completely drawing a blank. I'm in production mode in the shop right now. So if anything, I'd like to add to what you said about just making some functional things for the house, taking a break from really repetitive work. At this point, I've been doing plane hammers for
I was going to ask you about your hammers. I saw your hammers that you were selling. Those were beautiful. I really wanted to order one. Are you still taking orders for those?
I'm probably going to slow it down, now that I'm back
Okay.
to work. But yeah, it's still open. It's still up on my website.
Cool.
So
How many how many have you batched out so far?
I'm making 36 right
Holy
now.
cow.
I'm almost
Okay.
done. So yeah,
All right.
it's been ambitious for sure.
All right.
I'm at the point where I'm epoxying all the hammer handles onto the head. So I'm almost there.
Cool.
But so much sanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be careful, Amanda, be careful what you wish for when you do that. Because when I've been making, I don't know if you know the cutting gauge that I make. It was on the cover of Fine Woodworking years ago. As a design that I learned from Will Neptune. But I've been making those to sell for years. But, 3, 4 at a time, 5 or 6, whatever. And I made the mistake of in that dovetail online dovetail class that I did with the magazine. And I just kind of didn't even think of it. Said, oh, yeah, I make these for sale also. And all of a sudden, I got all these emails. I was like, oh, my God. And it was like, 50. And then another 40. And now it's one of those, what I do, people order them. I refuse to take their money, because if I take their money, I'm going to feel guilty because I haven't delivered it yet. Mm-hmm. And I tell them, I said, I can't promise you when it's going to happen, but it will happen. And I'll send it to you. If you like it, send me a check. Unfortunately, now I'm about 6 months behind.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I'm going to butcher this story horribly, I'm sure, but Peter Galbert was talking about getting into making Windsor chairs, and he'd made a chair. I want to say he was like taking it, to the farmer's market every week or once a month, trying to get a sale. Nothing was really clicking until finally he came in and he got like an order for 22 chairs. And it was like, same thing. Oh no, what have I done? And it's, yes, when it rains, it pours. But that's a good thing. I'm glad you had a lot of success with that. And is that kind of, do you see that leading to a career in boutique tool making in the future? Or is this like, I'm going back to furniture?
I kind of enjoy it. Well, I like production stuff like that. That's what I really felt I was strongest at in Phil's shop. I mean, we weren't doing like large productions, but really repetitive work and dialing in a process. I love doing that. So yeah, if I could come up with something else, I'd probably do it.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, no pressure. Don't put me on your hammer list, but should you ever, have any extras around or go back into that, I'll put me on your list. I'll take one.
Okay. Thank you. Cool. I appreciate that. Yeah. That wraps this episode of Shop Talk Live. If you have any questions you'd like answered on the show, send them into shoptalk@finewoodworking.com. If you're watching on YouTube, click that thumbs up button. And if you have the time and really want to help us out, leave a 5-star review on iTunes. Design Course with Mike Pekovich is now live for pre-registration. You can find that link at finewoodworking.com/elearning. Pre-registration for our Fine Woodworking New England event is linked on our homepage. We'll be back in 2 weeks. See you then.
Is Ben coming?
It's just me.
No, Amanda's the Ben.
I'm hosting.
Oh, Ben's not coming. Oh.
Yeah.